and welcome to Stretford Paddock. We're here for the news this morning. I say we, it is just me, innit? Me and the plants. As always, the bed's getting dirty and dirty. I need to wash my sheets just because of the dirt. You know, that's the risk I'm willing to take. We're here, obviously, for the paper talk / news this morning. And the big story, coming out of one Emile Heskey, who you think, oh, what's that going to do anything? Played for Birmingham, played for Aston Villa, kind of knows, you know, what's going on in those sorts of circles. And I'll put it in a bit of context as well in a moment. But he has come out and said of United's approach for Jack Grealish, he has said there is every chance Jack Grealish will join Man United in the summer. I don't think Jack will be at Villa come the end of the season. Jack can play in several different positions very well. He would do very well at Manchester United. So you sort of think, well, why is Emile Heskey's opinion particularly important on this? Well, that is because it's kind of I don't know how to phrase it really. United's approach for Grealish is definite, and there has been an approach for Grealish, and United are interested in Jack Grealish. Some of that hinges potentially, again, this is where you kind of connecting the dots a little bit. Some of that potentially hinges on Paul Pogba, whether he's still at the club next season. Some of that also potentially hinges on whether Aston Villa stay up this season. Maybe that is a little bit more in terms of the transfer fee, but there is a chance that if Aston Villa do stay up, that Jack Grealish will think maybe, you know, I would like to stay another season at Villa playing in the Premier League for them another year. And we'll get onto that actually because there's some interesting developments in the lower leagues which have kind of maybe set a little bit of a precedent for what may happen in the Premier League this season. So we'll move on to that in a little bit. But back to this quote then. So again, this is Emile Heskey talking to Genting Bet. He says, there is every chance Jack Grealish will join Man United in the summer. I don't think that Jack will be at Villa come the end of the season. Jack can play in several different positions very well. So that basically means that I would guess that he has heard that this deal is potentially on. And as we've reported a few times on Stretford Paddock now, we sort of, from our side of things, are relatively aware of the fact that United are interested in Jack Grealish and have been interested in him at least since January. I think there was a potential chance or a potential interest in signing him in January, but that didn't work out. That was sort of never going to work with the position Aston Villa were in. But as far as we're aware, this interest will carry on into the summer and it will be a player that United are looking to sign. Let me know in the comments actually whether you think Jack Grealish should be a good signing for United. Do you think that it hinges only on whether Paul Pogba leaves or not? Because that has been some of the rumours, hasn't it? That Pogba has to go, Grealish comes in to replace him. Or even that Bruno was sort of set to, or signed to replace Pogba. And then Grealish would be kind of more of a, I don't know about Herrera replacement because he doesn't quite play the same role, but you know, just trying to fill out those midfield numbers a little bit. In pyjama pants still, Joe. No, got jeans on today. I don't know if you can see that or not, but maybe I didn't lift my leg high enough, we'll have to see. So yeah, it's an interesting development when you've got players, like I said, Emile Heskey, who has played for Aston Villa, has played for Birmingham, definitely has links and sources and you know, people to chat to in those kind of circles. He's much more likely to be in the know, for instance, than, you know, even some journalists where players like that, people like Emile Heskey, people will chat to him, people will tell him stuff, people, oh, don't tell him about this, don't mention this, or this is what's going on, oh, he's going there, Jack Grealish is moving there, all this sorts of things happening. People do, you know, like to chat, don't they? And he is likely to have sources in and around Birmingham generally. I know he's from Leicester, but he's played in Birmingham a lot, and Aston Villa specifically. So I definitely think there is some fire with the smoke here. And I think we'll move on actually because I'd like to talk a little bit about leagues. I think it's is it 5 or 3 down to 6 or something like that. The non-league has essentially been null and void this season. I think that news came out either yesterday or the day before. So basically every league below, I think it's the conference, has just been said, you know, that this season didn't count, we'll start again next season. No promotions, no relegations, everything is as it was. And if that is something that is to be adopted by the Premier League, I think, you know, the move for Grealish there may become more tricky because not only will we have not had a chance to sort of push for fourth, which United were in arguably the best form of anyone in the league, except behind maybe Liverpool. But not only will we miss that chance to push for fourth, which would sort of help us in our chase for pretty much any player, it also means that Aston Villa, if that would be implemented in the Premier League, it would mean that Aston Villa stay in the Premier League, thus pushing the price up at least for Grealish, if not giving him an incentive to stay at Villa for another season. Basically, we just start the year again. So that's an interesting thought. But I think the problem with, well, the main stumbling block, should I say, in just restarting the Premier League, null and void and all that kind of thing, is the fact that there is 750 million quid worth of Premier League TV rights to be dished out that I think have already been dished out. So there's been reports in the papers and reports online that if the league is cancelled and becomes null and void, all the clubs will have to give that money back. Oh, there's nothing like that, is there? It's like when someone you propose to someone and then you're engaged, you've got your wedding ring on, and then you break up 6 weeks before the wedding. Can I have the ring back, please? No, I'm keeping it. I'm selling it. Well, I need that back because I haven't got any money for a new ring. So basically, the Premier League are like a jilted fiance, and they need to give their ring back, and they don't want to. Can't say I blame them. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. That I think it probably does favour us if the season is played out. But like I said, and it's sort of obvious, really, isn't it, that people's safety and all that kind of stuff has to come first. But we'll have to see how that does play out. I think the idea of signing Jack Grealish is an exciting one. He's obviously a very exciting player. Let's have a look at some stats for Jack Grealish then. Let me know what you think of him as a player and whether you think he'd be good. Only join in, Joe, what's happening with Grealish. Emile Heskey thinks he's probably going to join Man United. And like I said, I can tell you from what we know that United are definitely interested in Jack Grealish. And that's not in doubt. It just depends. Some of it depends potentially on whether Paul Pogba stays. Some of it, in terms of the fee at least, depends on whether Aston Villa stay in the Premier League or not. So let's have a look at some stats for Jack Grealish. If you were here yesterday, we were talking about Jadon Sancho. I think that was yesterday. It all blends together when you're here, doesn't it, really? But we were talking about Jadon Sancho in the last couple of days and talking about his stats in Bundesliga. I think he's got 17 goals, 18 assists or something, crazy like that. And I kind of said, even if he gets half of that in the Premier League, because obviously Bundesliga is a bit of a, people get more. What was it? Mkhitaryan got sort of 30 assists one season, didn't he? That can happen a little bit over there, where it doesn't tend to happen in the Premier League. I said even if he gets half of what he got in the Bundesliga, it would be a decent signing. Now look at Jack Grealish, 9 goals, 8 assists this season, which is roughly half of what Jadon Sancho's got. So, is he kind of, and he's doing it in the Premier League already. That is only in the Premier League and the EFL Cup. He hasn't played in the Champions League. Seemingly, he hasn't played in the FA Cup either, according to these stats that I'm getting from Transfer Market. So, if he'd have played probably 10 more games, he's only played 31 games this season, Jack Grealish. He probably would have played 10 more if he'd have played for United. He'd have played at least a handful of group stage matches in the Europa League. He probably would have played in the FA Cup as well. There's no reason to say he wouldn't have had sort of 12, 13 goals, 10 or 11 assists as well, which is kind of looking up towards those Sancho numbers. So I think maybe he's even slightly underrated, to be honest. Corey says, today's the day, Friday Night Live. It's called Late Night Live, mate. But yes, it is. We will be on tonight at 10 o'clock, so tune in for that in a little bit. Someone says, give us Jack Grealish and get rid of Pogba. Do people agree with that sentiment? The Pogba one just seems to go either way, depending on what the most recent quote was. Sometimes it's like, he might be staying, and everyone's like, I quite like him actually. And then the next day, Raiola's like, I want to take a big player in a big car, and I want to drive over to Real Madrid, and I want to have Paul Pogba in the back, and he's just doing like a Rubik's Cube and eating sandwiches and that. I'm going to drive in there, I'm going to drop him off at the Bernabeu, and everything's going to be great. And everyone's like, Pogba can fuck off again. But yeah, I think the fact that it is such a kind of volatile situation with Pogba, I think is the one thing that a lot of people are sick of as well. The fact that we just have to talk about him all the time. But yeah, so maybe Grealish is underrated a little bit. Those stats are pretty exceptional for someone that's playing in a team that is struggling to stay in the league. And he's only played 31 games this season, which isn't really very many, is it? Someone says, I would take Ndidi over Grealish every day. Very different players though, aren't they? And also, who says indeed he wants to join United and is available? I personally really like Ndidi as well, but I just think it doesn't seem as though United are looking for that kind of player, which I think is the biggest thing we're missing, to be honest. But we'll have to see. Bruno, best position is a 10 and not an 8. We don't want him to play deep. I assume you mean there that Grealish would come in and play as a number 10 and push Bruno back. He kind of plays all over the place for Villa, though. He often plays on the left-hand side, not really a left winger, but kind of like a more traditional left midfielder where he's coming inside a lot, a lot of passing rather than getting down the line and crossing the ball in. Although he can do that a little bit as well. But yeah, definitely the interest is there for Grealish, and it seems as though people who would be relatively in the know, like Emile Heskey, and like the people that, like I said, we've spoke to in recent weeks, it's great saying that, think that this deal is certainly possible and is certainly being pursued actively by Manchester United. Right, let's move on to our second story today. This is a good one. You know I like a rough translation, a Google Translate where all the words don't really make any sense. Well, I've got a doozy for you today. This is coming from Calcio Mercato, which is a publication in Italy that occasionally the likes of Fabrizio Romano will write for and that kind of thing. This isn't written by him, but this is written by Alessandro Cosatini. So, you know him, we love him. But the reliability of this newspaper, I'll be honest, is somewhat unknown to me. But like I said, there have been articles in the past and even this week written by Fabrizio Romano. So it must have some kind of, at least an allure for the likes of Romano to be writing in there. So we'll have to see in terms of reliability of the news. But here is the news. And again, this is a great translation. Juve Inter, there is Tonali. There's your headline. And we all know what that means. Juve Inter, there is Tonali. So there's your headline, and we all know what that means. Since last January, the race to Sandro Tonali in a future key is in full swing. Now, let me translate that a second time. So it's been translated into the sort of purgatory between Italian and English. What that means is, since last January, there have been a lot of people trying to sign Sandro Tonali. So Inter have been trying to sign him. Juve, who seem as though, according to this article, are the favourites. Juve are not only, is the subheading of this section of the article, and again, we all know what Juve are not only means. I'll tell you, it means it's not just Juve that wants him. But Juve is there once again. Juventus sporting director Paratici has decided not to abandon the Tonali option, despite the priority for the midfield being the return of Paul Pogba. And we don't need no translation for what that means. That means, and again going along with what Fabrizio Romano said in Calcio, what's it called again? Calcio Mercato. Fabrizio Romano was writing the other day talking about how Juventus have decided on trying to sign Paul Pogba back, and it would look like a sort of €100 million fee. We talked about that the other day on the news as well. It says that Juventus's priority is signing Paul Pogba, but they are still keen on Sandro Tonali. It goes on to say, meanwhile, Paratici himself has decided not to abandon the Sandro Tonali option with Brescia, which has several proposals. United himself, meaning Manchester United, is among the foreign clubs that have moved. And again, I'll translate that. What that means is Manchester United have also made an approach for Sandro Tonali. We've been linked with him for a little while. We linked with him in the summer. I think he's been linked with a lot of big clubs. He's a very sort of highly rated youngster over in Italy. Like I said, he plays for Brescia. He's only 19 years old. And he kind of looks like, what's his name? There's an actor that he looks like, but I can't think of his name now, so that was a good little joke, that one. Do you know when you reference something and then you don't know what it's called, so you can't reference it? Just love doing that. But he's only 19 years old, born in the year 2000, so he must be 20 soon. I'm not even that young. He's made 24 appearances this season, 1 goal, 5 assists. Like I said, he's a sort of midfielder, defensive kind of midfielder, but a ball-playing defensive midfielder, as you can see there from the 5 assists, which is relatively high for a defensive midfielder. Very highly rated, and it looks as though it's the sort of person, like, do you know in Germany, when you see like a promising young German kid, you're like, he's going to buy him. there's no way he don't go to Bayern. And then he's linked with everyone in the world, and then somehow he goes on a free to Bayern. It's almost the same in Italy, isn't it, with Juventus, where it's like, oh, there's a young Italian. Well, he's going to go to Juve then, isn't he? It's like, well, who knows? United have also, made an approach, or so maybe he won't join Juve. And then you're like, let me get my hopes up then. He's joined Juve on a free. So don't get your hopes up too much. But the interesting part of that is how that deal potentially does hinge on Paul Pogba, like we said before. I'll give you a little recap in a minute. Ben and Brad, thanks for asking. I'll give you a little recap in a moment. Born in the year 2000, he must be 12. He is 12 and 7, which is how I do ages. 19, in case you don't know the maths on that. We don't want him rolling around every 5 minutes, thanks. We have Dan James for that. I assume you're talking about Grealish, which we will come back to in a little bit. Corey says, some fans think they know a lot about Tonali because they've played with him on FIFA. Like, come on, how many people watch Brescia matches every week? Exactly right. I didn't have like a future stars card on FIFA, and he's very highly rated on FIFA. And he's obviously a very promising player. There's a lot of talk about him. A lot of big clubs after him. They mentioned Inter, they mentioned Juventus, they mentioned Manchester United on that article, or in that article, should I say. But again, it does seem as though Juventus's key priority is getting Paul Pogba back. And again, that kind of links back to the Grealish article we were talking about before, the Grealish news, which we will come back to as a final little wrap-up. In terms of Paul Pogba leaving, that could impact our signing of Jack Grealish, who, according to Emile Heskey, has every chance that he will join Manchester United in the summer. I don't think that Jack will be at Villa come the end of the season. Jack can play in several different positions very well. He would do very well at Manchester United. Again, a lot of you seem keen on Jack Grealish. I'm personally very keen on Jack Grealish. I didn't... In the Championship, and obviously he had this record of the most games played in the Premier League without winning a match. He played like 30 games without winning a game. So obviously, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's played poorly, but he's never really... We've never seen him kind of galvanise his team and really force one of those performances where you win your team a game. We'd never seen that until this season. He looked excellent against United, actually. Scored that lovely goal, far corner bent in the top corner. But I think the thing that we've seen this season with Jack Grealish, and personally, me myself have seen of Jack Grealish, is he's got a certain, like, again, it's such a cheesy way of saying it, but a kind of like an X factor to him, where you're watching him, you're thinking he's a bit special somehow. He's got excellent dribbling. He's got this kind of almost like a charismatic way of playing football. I know that sounds silly, and it seems like this intangible thing that doesn't get you wins, but in the way we've seen with Bruno, when he comes in and he's just got a feel to him, when he's on the ball, you know straight away it's him, because the way he approaches the ball, the way he looks up, the confidence with which he plays passes, with which he takes shots, it just has a different feel to him to other players. And Jack Grealish feels to me like he has that, where you're watching him, you're going, hang on a sec, who's that? And it's Jack Grealish, and it's always Jack Grealish. Whenever he's on the ball, you think, oh, there's something going on there, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And I think that is an excellent thing to have in players, and we've had so many of those down the years where, you know, you just sort of think, oh, well, hello, he's doing something different to everyone else, and I don't know what it is, but I can just feel it. So I think personally it would be an excellent signing for United. But again, let me know in the comments, would you be willing to let Paul Pogba go if it meant signing Jack Grealish? Let me know in the comments. That's my question for you before we go. On a side note, Maradona is shit on Pez. So I shit on a Pez once, on a little dispenser thing. I had to throw it away because it was essentially ruined. I got all the sweets out through the bottom. But, you know, once they shit on a Pez, it's game over. Grealish has an X factor about him. Just said that, didn't I? So thanks that someone is taking closed captioning notes for me there. Thumbs up, people. It's hard right now, so we need to support the show. That's a great point. Thank you, Falmods. If you could like the video, 1 like equals £1 million in the transfer kitty for Jack Grealish. So if we can get up to, 100 likes or something, we'll probably sign him. And again, that might not work, but why risk it? It's his shin guards. It might be his shin guards. Nice and low. Tuck your socks underneath and behind. Get a lovely curvature of the shin. He's got lovely calves as well. Someone says, yes, Paul Pogba out, Grealish in 100%. That does tend to be the consensus. I think the problem with Pogba leaving that a lot of people seem to have, and myself included, is up until the last few months since Bruno's come in, I still kind of don't trust the board to replace him with an adequate replacement. His party thinks, well, sell Pogba, and no offence to Ighalo, but do what we did with Lukaku, which is, yeah, he's kind of been replaced, but not really. The last thing you want to hear is, oh, we think Garner and Levitt are good enough. Not that they aren't good enough, but if you're selling the likes of Paul Pogba, United's talisman, United's only genuine world-class player over the last few years, he needs to be replaced by not necessarily another world-class player, but someone that can come into the first team and fill that position. We can't be replacing him with, oh, we'll wait and see. We'll just get someone who's 20 million quid. We'll get a youngster in. United need to replace him with a big signing. I think if Jack Grealish is that big signing, then maybe so be it. Although I would love to see Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes playing together. Someone says, I want Paul to stay. Yeah, someone says we need Dayton Junior, which, for those who don't know, is the top scorer in, I think, the Northern Premier League, or whatever it is, on Stephen Howson's Football Manager series over on his Twitch. So, very much an inside joke from Oliver Edwards there. Even I almost didn't get that, and I'm actually inside the inside. I'm looking out at that joke, and I still didn't get it. I did, though. Pogba is a different kind of player. We need him. Brad, I like that you're offering this alternative opinion. Just joined two lovely calves. Glad to see we're having a usual Paddock paper talk. It's all about calves on here, isn't it? Let's face it. Gareth Blades, Grealish, a good character to come in, but not world class. Yeah, he's not world class yet, and maybe he never will be. But the thing with him is, you don't need a team full of world class players. You need a team full of excellent players with a few world class players dotted around them, but that work together well. Like we saw it with Real Madrid down the years. How many world class players did they have in that side with Beckham and that kind of era, Figo and all them lot? I think Beckham only won one La Liga title with them. And they didn't win the Champions League for a very long time. So it's not just about having world-class players, it's about having excellent players and a few of the right world-class players dotted in and around them. Personally, that's what I think anyway. Someone says, Ole out, Howson in. Well, I'll have a word. I'll see if Howson fancies it. Bellingham can play further forward. He can play out wide, the same as Gomez. People talking about Jude Bellingham there. Another story that we have been following on Stretford Paddock. It looks as though he has a few clubs to choose from. I wonder how, the whole coronavirus and lockdown and all that stuff affects that kind of deal, a Bellingham deal, where his contract runs out at the end of the season. But we just had news this morning that contracts will presumably be played until the end of the season, which is because that's what the contracts were designed for. So when you sign a contract to the 30th of May or the 30th of June, whatever it may be, that is under the assumption that is when the season ends, which is why their contracts are, designed to end on the 30th of June. So I think FIFA Pro have just said that contracts will be maintained until the end of the season, because that's the design of a contract. It's to play out the 1920 season. So Bellingham presumably will still be at Birmingham, maybe until August. Maybe, who knows when the season will end. All very much up in the air at the moment. It's about having the right players and the right system. Exactly right. Hushy Love. Great name. I'm going to be back tonight for Late Night Live. For those of you who didn't hear before, it's going to be a good one. There's a lot to talk about. I mean, obviously there's a lot to talk about. It's crazy out there. It's crazy out there. I mean, I say it's crazy. It's absolutely gorgeous, actually. It's sunny, not a cloud in the sky, lovely weather. But 10 o'clock tonight, live from maybe here, maybe through there, maybe an unknown location altogether, a different location. A lockdown safe location though, I must add. So be sure to join me for Late Night Live tonight. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, because, like I said, I'm doing this video from my bed, mate. So if you don't think I need those likes, you don't know much about me, because I need them likes. And like I said, every like is another million in the transfer fund for Man United. Might not be true, but why risk it? Right, thank you very much for joining me. We've got a transfer review coming out this afternoon as well from Stephen Howson. You know Stephen Howson, young lad, short hair, beard. You might have seen him on YouTube. Anyway, he's going to be coming with a transfer review in a little bit. And like I said, we will have Late Night Live tonight. So make sure you tune in for that at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much for joining me. See you next time.